Hi there. So, it's the fourth Sunday of Advent. It's the Sunday before Christmas, and what I'm going to share with you this week is not simply something that is liturgically for the fourth Sunday of Advent when we think about Mary and the Annunciation. I was planning to do that, but I've changed. I'm more going to give you a carol service talk, because in churches this Sunday, that's often what's going to be the big service, at least in churches that thankfully haven't had to cancel theirs, which sadly one of my two churches has had to. So that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to read one of the traditional carol service readings to you, which is Isaiah chapter 9 and verses 2 to 7. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you, as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. In our family, we're in this sort of transitional time with our kids. Our daughter went to university this autumn, and the subject she's studying is what's actually my hobby, which is photography. And our son is in the middle of his university applications and interviews and entrance exams, and he wants to go to university next year to study the subject that was the one I was best at, which is maths. Now, it's kind of a matter of pride for me. I'm sure that they're both following things that are and were close to my heart. It's also a little bit poignant. I suppose there are times when ministry feels a particularly rotten place to be, that I think, oh, if only I were actually a photographer. Although, to be honest, that's a pipe dream, because I didn't take it up at the age of 9 like our daughter did. I only took it up in my early 20s. Or with the maths, it's quite a poignant thing to see with our son pursuing that, because I didn't get to university at the age of 18. A month before the A-levels, I sustained a serious chronic neck problem and didn't sit the A-levels. And it's lovely to see him still be able to pursue all that, and who knows where he will go. He hopefully will have opportunities that health and social background denied me. He's who knows whether he'll get in there or not, but he's applying to Cambridge to study maths, and I had an applied maths teacher in sixth form who was a Cambridge graduate and who said to me, David, you really ought to apply to Cambridge. And I dismissed that out of hand. I said I couldn't face it because I was just a lad from urban North London in a comprehensive school a long time ago, when really Oxford and Cambridge did not make the overtures that they have started to in recent years towards state school kids. And I would have never made, I felt, the huge cultural jump, and I couldn't face studying among a bunch of toffs, basically. Maybe our son will make it, maybe he won't. And the thing I have to watch with both our daughter and our son's progress is that I don't start living my dreams through them. I can have aspirations for them, but my aspirations must be that they fulfill what is best for them rather than just doing what I would have loved to have done. But of course all parents have aspirations. And yet, when we think of God the Father sending his son Jesus at Christmas, I think what we have to say is that the Father had something rather stronger than aspirations for his son. Clear prophetic words, such as the ones in Isaiah 9, set out what Jesus would do. And although those words must have had an application at the time Isaiah preached them originally, clearly Christians looked later and said these words had their fullest fulfillment in Jesus himself. And so these things that are much more than aspirations, but really Jesus' whole mission, I just want to touch on in this talk, and it's those 4 titles he's given in verse 6 of that reading that I want to think about. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So let's start with Wonderful Counselor. Now, clearly, because of the time in which that was written, you can't think of a counsellor in the way we do today, of some trained therapist who talks and listens. But what's there in the counsellor is much more than the advisor, because kings had their counsellors in those days who were their political advisors, if you like, but more that the counsellor is the one who comes alongside. And that, of course, gives us a wonderful image of what the birth of Jesus is about. That God didn't stay remote from us in all our human struggles. He came alongside us. He hung out with us. He took on human flesh. He knows all that it is to be human himself. Isn't that far, far better than just a remote God? It isn't true just to say that God is watching us from a distance. God came alongside us in Jesus, the Wonderful Counselor. And then Mighty God. Well, what goes through your mind when you think of someone mighty? Well, perhaps you think of the kind of almost fire-breathing dragon or victorious army, one who exercises power to destroy enemies. But before we ever get to the last resort of destroying evil enemies, comes a different mighty power, one that Jesus showed, the mighty power of transforming evil enemies. And Jesus made that possible he showed it through forgiveness and through his own suffering. This is the one who spoke words of forgiveness to the sick, such as a paralyzed man, and when they heard that they were forgiven, they were also healed. This is the one who in his great suffering on the cross prayed, "Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing." This is the one who forgave the people that society said was unforgivable, and who himself went and suffered on the cross, that we all might know that. That is Jesus as mighty God, not just the miracles, not just that in the last judgment he will judge evil, but that before we ever get to that, his mighty power is seen transforming evil. And rather than just look down our noses at the people whom we dismiss as the wicked people of this age and think, well, that's just for them, we have to remember that there's darkness in our own hearts, and that Jesus offers his mighty power to each of us to transform us through his suffering on the cross and by his words of forgiveness to us. All that is implied here. And then the third title, Everlasting Father. And here, when we think about the word Father, don't worry about all the later Christian notions centuries after Isaiah about the Trinity, but see Father not just in the relational warm sense, but also remember that in ancient times the father was the head of the tribe, head of the clan. And so when we speak of an everlasting Father, we are seeing a head of our clan who is there eternally, there forever, not one who will die and be replaced by the next of kin, but always our head, always our leader. And like the best leader, he again, like I said in the first point, didn't stay remote. He came among us. It's like the stories we hear in the UK about how during the Second World War, King George and the Queen Mother dressed up in disguise and moved among a lot of the ordinary citizens of London. And they went into the underground shelters and they listened to what people were saying, people not realising who they were. And they stayed living in London when they could have been easily evacuated to a safe place. And that kind of leadership is the leadership of Jesus, who has been in the thick of it with humanity. And he deserves our allegiance. And then finally, Prince of Peace. We talk a lot about peace on earth and goodwill at Christmas, don't we? We remember the words of the angels to the shepherds. And Jesus is the one who brings that peace. It's the peace that he makes by offering us reconciliation with God. For this was the mission he came on. This is why he was born. To bring us peace with God by dealing with the barrier of sin between us and God. To give us peace from experiencing that forgiveness ourselves. To bring peace as he helps us to forgive those who have hurt us. All these ways are why Jesus came, to be Prince of Peace in his life, in his suffering, in his death, and in all that it's promised through his resurrection. Christmas says this was why he came. So these are wonderful reasons to see how amazing Jesus is. The wonderful counselor alongside us, the mighty God who transforms evil, the everlasting Father who deserves our allegiance as our head because he's been in the mess with us, and the Prince of Peace who brings that reconciliation and peace to our relationship with God, with others, and even within ourselves. That's a huge and wonderful picture of the Jesus whose coming we celebrate at Christmas. So, when we come to the Nativity, when we look at the baby in the manger, somehow what we need to do is more than just coo our oohs and our ahs at the sight of a baby. It's to remember that he came not just with his Father's aspirations, but on this great mission from his Father. And it's a mission to make all things and all people new, us included. And when we look at the infant Jesus at Christmas, let's remember that he was there to grow up, to be the person who said to people, and who says to us, follow me. And if you want to have a true Christmas, then the thing to do is to say, either for the first time or to renew it, to say, yes, Jesus, I will follow you. And I hope and pray we can all make that commitment. If you're interested in that and you're not part of a church, contact your local church. Leave a comment under the video and we'll respond. But remember that in amidst everything we enjoy at Christmas, and why shouldn't we, the biggest and the best thing is to say yes to Jesus who came. I will follow you. God bless you all and have an extremely happy Christmas. Bye-bye.